You're listening to the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast, and I'm Lou Temlett. I know you're having a good day because either you've been on the mats, considering getting on the mats, or maybe you're supporting the future in this sport. I'm so happy you're here listening or watching this episode. Please don't tap out before the end. When you want to find a new community, start training Jiu Jitsu. I'd like to welcome Leo Coates to my podcast. Hi, Leo.
Hi, yeah, how's it going?
Very good. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for having me.
You are very welcome. And thank you very much for the Clinch Coffee t-shirt, repping the brand.
We're repping.
Which is always nice. But equally, I have been able to purchase some of the incredible Clinch coffee. And I will say that the Clinch is my favourite. We will get to the coffee in a bit.
Yeah, brilliant.
So, Leo, you're a 4-stripe blue belt and you started jiu-jitsu kind of during lockdown period or maybe just after.
Yeah, it's coming up to 5 years now in September, October time. So yeah, it was kind of coming out of the horrible period of lockdowns is when I discovered the amazing sport of jiu-jitsu.
So did you know anything about jiu-jitsu prior to starting? Because your background is in a different community sport.
Yeah, I mean, I did judo when I was really young, which I enjoyed, but then kind of as things changed, migrated completely, I found rugby. So I played rugby for probably 20 years solid, up to quite a high level in Surrey. So that was my life, training, every day, morning, evening, matches on Saturdays, and then out on Saturday nights. That's kind of the rugby world.
Nice.
But then got to a stage where, you go to a pre-season and everyone's huge and younger and faster and stronger, and it's a fairly physical sport. As you know, you might be watching the Six Nations at the minute, and the body started saying, "I think this is probably done now." I had a shoulder reconstruction, came back, had another shoulder injury, and the surgeon at the time said, "You can go back, but then you might suffer with severe arthritis and things like that." So called it a day, but I didn't know anything about jiu-jitsu. It was a podcast, as most people listen to in those what do we do days during COVID. It was podcasts, and it wasn't a Joe Rogan, funnily enough. It was a James, one of the really early James Smith ones. He had a Theon Davis that he was talking to, and it just really was. I was listening to it, and I was like, I think they trained that morning, and James Smith was like, you absolutely destroyed me, and they were going into the nitty gritty of how, and I was like, how can he's from my world. He used to be a semi-professional rugby player, and then he discovered jiu-jitsu. I was like, how can that happen? So just ultimately geeked out and watched videos of some of the greats, Hodger and Leandro Lowe, and I just like, I need to do this. So as soon as kind of the gyms were allowed back, I found my local gym, Impulse BJJ in Peterborough. So shout out. And that was it, really. No turning back.
Good. I love hearing stories of people listening to podcasts, as always. And whilst I didn't hear that particular episode with James and Theon, I think that Theon is on an upcoming episode of James's, whether it's out yet or on soon. Any of us in the jiu-jitsu world will have seen Instagram stories and such like with that spotted her and James, so that will be very exciting actually. 5 years on then potentially.
Literally like reunited. Let's see if they roll again and see if James does any better than the first time.
I love hearing people in the jiu-jitsu world kind of meeting up and being on podcasts. I'm yet to meet you in person, Leo, but the day this goes out, I will be up at Queen Rollers camp with Amy Devans, which is going to be very exciting. But just kind of reflecting on the start of your journey and being inspired by James Smith, Theon Davis to start training and to find out more. What were your initial expectations for starting in jiu-jitsu?
I think expectations was, so amongst all of this, I'd moved house as well. So I was in London left my rugby club, which was my life, moved to Peterborough, where we are now. So my expectations was, I think this is how I'm going to meet a new community, because I'd left the rugby community behind. I didn't want to rejoin a new rugby community because it's quite hard to break into.
Yeah,
So expectations was to go in. I had no expectations of what I was going to be able to do. I thought, like most people, I'd be able to use my strength and play rugby and all this sort of stuff. But
yeah,
it was to meet new people and embed myself within a community that I know. And you hear from so many people when you do listen to podcasts, there's such a strong supportive community,
yeah,
and that's absolutely why I've stuck at it for this long. It's not that long, 5 years, but it's quite a long time when you think about it.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm safe to say that the community that we've got, luckily at our gym, is phenomenal. You know, friends, really good friends. You can pick the phone up and they'll be there to help you. So
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
expectation I had, and then I got absolutely destroyed by a female purple belt called Lanisha, who is a beast. Yeah. So she put me back in my place very quickly.
Good. It's always nice when you meet people so much more experienced, and they really do put you back in your place and start to allow you to reflect on your current skill and ability in a thing. And I think we meet these people throughout our jiu-jitsu career, whether that's in a competitive nature or a hobbyist or however we show up in the jiu-jitsu world. But there's always a moment where we go, oh, we're reflecting on
Yeah,
how we perform in that particular
absolutely.
session, not necessarily how good or bad we are, but just how our performance is showing up at that kind of point in time.
Yeah, and I think it's so important as well. And you learn this through martial arts and jiu-jitsu, especially as my sporting background was very much win or lose. If
Yeah,
you lose a game, it's terrible and your head's down and it's ruined your weekend. But in jiu-jitsu, if you lose a round, you
yeah,
head up, carry on. It's literally it's not the end of the world.
yeah,
And you just carry on, and everyone kind of gives you a boost, tells you what you did wrong or what you can focus on.
yeah.
So that aspect, it's brilliant for growth of your own personal game.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, that the kind of process of learning and developing and seeing our progress in a slightly different way. I'm going to reflect on my business kind of experience, but when I've worked certainly in some corporates and smaller businesses, when you make mistakes as such, it's an opportunity to correct and choose a different direction and just make improvements.
Mhm.
It's never lost in that moment. So for me, it's continuing the echo of the positive kind of reinforcement and the continuous improvement that we
Yeah,
have in jiu-jitsu. And for me, the feeling like it's a terrible thing, when we lose a match or whatever, it doesn't really come into my mindset, which I'm really grateful for, because I see so many people, not so many, a few individuals that are kind of throwing everything out and going, my jiu-jitsu is terrible. Whilst we all have those moments, I think it's really helpful to um, put things in a kind of compartmentalized time and space, and
that's it.
actually it was then, and now I can do and learn new things to be even better
Yeah,
than I was before.
absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about business, and then we'll probably come back to a bit more of your jiu-jitsu journey. But now it's been mentioned, you started Clinch Coffee in 2025, which is so new and so fresh. But you've come such a long way with your brand, your products, your development. Let's start with coffee.
Yeah, the most important part of Clinch Coffee, really. So yeah, I suppose yeah, started in late 2025, so still very, very early as a business. My background is coffee. So I've worked for one of the biggest roasteries in London, and we provided coffee to international tech firms and banks and things like that. So it was all about quality. We sourced coffee, roasted it, and then distributed it. So it's mainly B2B coffee business.
Yeah,
And it's my love, it's my passion. As you see from my Instagram, I'm always making coffee at home. I'm always looking at different ways of making it, different gizmos and gadgets, because I know not everyone has an expensive espresso machine, or not everyone's got the time to take, care to grind coffee and use the
Yeah.
distributors and all this sort of stuff. So um, I was working in coffee. I thought training jiu-jitsu as well. I know there's a massive coffee community within jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people drink really at the moment because cost of living and so on and so forth. And I just think the culture shifted away from alcohol now, and people spend their money on a good coffee.
Yeah.
So the company I was at, we did great things, but I thought, coffee can do a lot more good. The world drinks so much coffee. Like, why can't that support others? And
Yeah.
that's when I was just sitting there whirring away, and I'm like, massive community in jiu-jitsu, coffee. You know, I see people that need support. Why can't we use this as a mechanism to help? And
Yeah.
that's kind of where it all just started clicking for me. And as we've touched on, the community within jiu-jitsu, not in just the gym that you train at, but every gym I've spoken to is, supportive, on board, interested, because, it benefits them at the end of the day as well. They
Yeah.
want to be seen. Well, they are, a lot of them are already doing amazing things within their local communities.
Yeah.
So why not, have a coffee offer that everyone drinks that does good for their local community? And that's kind of where
Great.
it came from. But
I love
my
it.
biggest thing ever is that the coffee has to be good.
Yeah.
I cannot sell bad coffee. Uh, I just can't do it. So quality of
Good.
coffee is important. The sourcing, the farms that it even comes from, we need to make sure that they're being looked after, because we want to invest in our local communities, but we need to make sure that the communities that are actually producing the coffee are being looked
Yeah.
after equally.
Yeah.
So the whole sourcing process from growers to ending up in your cup is thought about, which is
Yeah.
super important.
Okay, now where did this love for coffee start? Was it in your kind of in employment, or have you got a history of coffee prior to your working career, Leo?
No, again, I've worked in kind of hospitality, contract catering my entire career since I didn't go to university. I worked in a garden centre in Surrey, and kind of worked my way from pot wash to front of house to working in the cafes, the coffee shops, and so on and
Yeah,
so forth. So I've always been immersed in coffee, and I've seen how coffee has gone from just like a necessity to something that
yeah,
people indulge in.
yeah.
So yeah, it's mainly work profession that is coffee, and I've just taken a real shine to it, and yeah, that's
Good.
where how we've landed with Clinch.
I'm very pleased that you have. My history with coffee. I was a child of the 80s, and um, I took the responsibility to make my parents coffee on a regular basis. Sadly, it was when the ground kind of coffee. I'm not saying ground for filter, but the very fine powder coffee, and we kind of converted to freeze dried granules. Now, Clinch Coffee is not any of that, which I'm really pleased. But the kind of coffee shop coffee culture was very prevalent in the 80s and
Yeah,
90s, and it continues to be something that brings communities, families together as a social. I take my kids to
absolutely.
a coffee shop, and we have a debrief at least once or twice a week, and we just sit around. I'm the one drinking coffee, thankfully, not them. But
Not
it's
yet.
just a time to share, you know, share time and have an experience that kind of brings a community back together. Now,
100%.
talk us through the kind of the choice with the coffee, and some of the background behind Clinch, and certainly the farms, and where you're sourcing some of the coffee beans coffee
Yeah.
from.
So essentially, you can get coffee from many different places around the world. Coffee price is basically the stock market. So you can watch coffee stocks and shares bouncing around. It's so turbulent.
Yeah.
Brazil last year had its worst crop because of drought and fires. So they lost 70% of their crop. So coffee prices
Wow.
skyrocketed. Um, but with where it clinches at the moment, I could be looking at some super high end geishas from Japan, but the price of that is phenomenal. So with the coffees that I source, they need to be crowd pleasers, something not too fruity for you, Lou,
Yeah, thank you.
and but something that is versatile as well. So, I've only got three coffees at the minute, with another one coming online in the next couple of weeks, which is really exciting, from Colombia. Um, but through the tasting process and the sourcing process, I have to think about the market and
Yeah,
who actually I'm targeting, and it needs to be a versatile coffee. So the Clinch Coffee, which is the single origin from Brazil,
love
which
it.
is everyone raves about. That is amazing in all different ways of brewing. So it's really good for an espresso with, so your flat whites and things like that, but also amazing through a cafetiere. So it's your traditional coffee, very kind of chocolatey, hazelnutty notes.
Yeah,
Um, but then to contrast that, we've got the Anything Goes, which is the single origin Ethiopian coffee, which you can make it anyway, but its best way is in filter format.
yeah,
And that's where you get the best out of it. So through kind of thinking about that, I work with a broker who they basically get the coffee from the farms to the UK. They kind of deal with all that. And then the roasting element, I work with a roastery just up the road in Cambridge near me. And we kind of flex on the notes, and we roast it to how I think it should be in terms of its darkness, or nothing's dark roast, it's all medium to light roast, which
yeah,
again we could get really really nerdy around coffee, but we'll keep that for another day.
yeah.
But
That's
again,
another
so
podcast,
yeah,
Leo.
that's in itself, yeah, absolutely. So but the farms themselves, so the Brazilian, it's from a small hold farm, so not from your massive commercial farm. So another big thing that I want to do is make sure that small farms who may only grow, a tiny amount, not even a couple of tons a year in a crop,
Yeah,
they can get their coffee to market and fight kind of the big boys in the industry. Otherwise, they'll end up selling amazing coffee for half of nothing,
yeah,
usually within their own kind of territories. So smallhold farms is really important so that they can get their coffee. All of the information about the coffee is on the website, right down to the
yeah,
farmers' names. So it's very kind of relatable.
yeah,
And we all, I want to always support the same farmers, so they've kind of got longevity. They're not
yeah,
worrying that, oh, they've bought X amount of kilos this crop. What's going to happen next crop? So
yeah,
it's almost giving them a succession of, I'm going to continue this, because so many
yeah,
small farms fold, or they decide just not to grow coffee. And word on the
yeah,
street is 10 to 12 years we might not have coffee because of climate, because of ways of farming.
yeah,
Um, the world needs to change its outlook on kind of certification. So lots of coffee is Rainforest Alliance and things like this. That's just something that the farms have to pay. They do it
mm,
anyway, but it's just an accreditation. So I always look for things like regenerative farming. So that's a serious accreditation that they put back into the land. They don't use chemicals, they don't use pesticides. Everything is natural resource. So they're looking after the land they've got for longevity of coffee crops, just to give us a bit longer of good coffee before
yeah,
we have coffee grown in labs, which is
yeah.
already there.
Yes. Before we head on to anything more technical, I just want to thank you for your knowledge and experience in the coffee industry, because when individuals start small businesses, sometimes there tends not to be always a lot of depth of knowledge in an area. Individuals will pick up a kind of topic or a field of industry or expertise and start a business, but it really does sound like you've got such a wealth of knowledge and experience all the way through the industry for what you're doing now. And I just want to thank you for that, and pay kind of honor to it, because
No, thank you.
it really does aid to the depth of knowledge and experience, that not just in your product, but what you're doing on the back of that. Let's also come on to what you're doing on the other side of your kind of coffee sales, and the benefit you're putting back into the jiu-jitsu community, because it feels almost as in-depth and supporting the longevity of individuals in the sport of jiu-jitsu as well.
Yeah, absolutely. it works both ways. Longevity of coffee and longevity of youngsters and people being able to train.
Yeah,
Um, as we kind of caught up on before the podcast, it's a scary world out there. Everything's getting more and more expensive, and the worst thing is, I've got two young children. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old who my boy comes training with me, but not everyone's got financial access to even walk into that gym. They don't have that
yeah,
lucky enough to walk into a gym and experience a community.
yeah,
And I've seen just in himself the benefit of training already. So,
yeah,
and just through training, we see youngsters come in and they won't even make eye contact and they're very timid, but give it a couple of weeks and they're chatty, they're more confident, chests are out, they're messing around with you and they're trying to
yeah,
submit you and stuff like that. So for me, it's so important to support that side of it, whether that
yeah,
be to step foot on the mats for the very first time, or whether that's someone that's already training but already concerned that they might not be able to carry on because of the costs of travel, the costs of
yeah,
competing, the costs of even a gi. It's all expensive kit. So through Clinch Coffee, that's the catalyst for me is to donate back. So even though I've only been kind of operating Clinch since August last year, I'm supporting some youngsters already with competition entry fees. Don't worry about that. You focus on other things,
yeah,
focus on the competition and winning it. Don't have to worry about that. Training equipment, gis, and things like that. So, and it's amazing. Just a little thing like that can go a very, very long way. Um,
yeah,
and also getting some role models. I think keeping role models in the sport is huge,
yeah,
so that it's not all adults. For a 7 or 8 year old to walk on the mat and it's only adults that they can aspire to be,
yeah,
it's quite a big leap. So to have some young athletes that can continue to train because they're being supported, and yes, there's big sponsors out there and stuff like that, but some of the not so well known athletes, for example, they should be recognised as well.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to expand a bit more in talking about the young individuals that are coming up through the ranks of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in a moment. This episode is sponsored by Clinch Coffee. Clinch Coffee carries legacy of its land, its people, and its journey to your cup, all to support the next generation of Jiu Jitsu practitioners. Leo, founder of Clinch Coffee, has an extensive background in the coffee industry and now brings his skill to fight for something bigger. Clinch Coffee represents quality and a crowd-pleasing espresso or a full-bodied and sweet filter coffee, and that's just the Clinch I'm talking about. This coffee comes from an award-winning farm in Brazil where its sustainability credentials are exceptional, with 33% of land planted with coffee and the rest left with natural reserve. Clinch Coffee truly consider the future welfare and support of everyone involved. Head straight to clinchcoffee.co.uk and buy your preferred coffee today. And make sure that when you see Leo or his team, you buy a pack or two at your next competition or BJJ event. This is the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast with me, Lou Temlett, coming to you from the UK. Keep checking out the clips that drop as soon as I've recorded an episode, usually way before an episode gets officially released over on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Today, I'm having a conversation with Leo Coates. Leo, you started talking about the benefit of supporting young athletes and individuals in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Let's continue, because there are so many events, invitationals, competitions where we're seeing an abundance of young people coming through this sport that would easily submit us both at blue belts.
Easily, easily, terrifying.
Um, do you have a number of young people in your club and in your area?
Yeah, so Impulse, BJJ in Peterborough, it's stacked. So there's almost a waiting list now for the kids classes, and there's three every single night. And you just have to take a snapshot across Instagram platforms to see that
Yeah,
replicated, I think, across the country.
yeah,
I've luckily enough, again, just through conversations and people I've been speaking to just through coffee and things like that, go and visit people who when I started, I looked up to these people, was like, oh my God. But now I get to speak with them and get invited to go and train. They're
Yeah.
all doing amazing things, and their children's classes are really busy,
Yeah.
which is just fantastic to see. But again, that's with children that can afford it, or that's with
Yeah.
children that can afford it for X amount of time, and then they might vanish. So there's a big revolving door, absolutely, and that's going to happen. But
Yeah.
for the youngsters that want to continue, I think that's where there's
Mm,
a bit of an issue.
yeah. Now, there's always a challenge as a parent getting our children into any new activity and hoping that they're going to kind of stick with it, but equally knowing that it's their choice and their decision. But as we've already discussed, the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu community brings and gives so much to everyone involved, not just learning the sport, the mindset, the well-being, the community. It just has so many different factors that really help so many people.
Yep, absolutely. And it's again, go back to kind of my rugby background. Rugby
Mm.
always has a very big youngster setup, like the minis and stuff like that. But with that, it's very much a sport. It's we're going to go and
Yeah,
we're going to run hard at people, and it's a contact. In the
yeah,
parents are very animated. Whereas what I think jiu-jitsu is, or martial arts, it's open access. For
yeah,
the children that aren't those sporty, really competitive parents, it can be someone that is not about that, but they'll go and they'll find someone and they'll enjoy it and they'll learn in a different way,
yeah,
to however works in their mind, different cognitive
yeah.
skills. And it's just such a different
Mm.
world to other sports.
I think you're right in reflecting and kind of commenting on that. It's not always the really highly competitive children, parents. It's those that just want to be part of something bigger. I mean, we all seek to identify with, this, that, or the other. But I think having a sport, having a community, and just having people around that just in a really positive way, I think it's so helpful for so many people. And you can take or give as much as you want from
Yeah,
this sport, but equally it's about the funding. How can other small businesses like yours support the next generation of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioners, hobbyists? What can any of us do to you know use you as a role model, Leo,
yeah,
with Clinch Coffee, and help some, our local community even.
yeah. Again, I think, and it's, again, I've got loads of plans. But it's thinking about having community days at gyms, so like open mats where all are welcome. Um, I know there's always a cost attached, but again, that's where small businesses could potentially have a pot set aside for local community donations. You don't have to be set up as a charity and things like that. As long as it's a separate pot, it's fine. Where it's come and have a taster, come and see what it's all about. And that's kind of what we're looking at doing in my local gym, is
Yeah,
inviting. It's an open door policy. Come and have a look, come and have a train, see what
yeah,
it's all about. It's not scary, it's very welcoming, and then we go from there, and then we can almost kind of see who's keen and what funding they might need to be. Whether it
yeah,
might just be a gi, it might just be, I know some gyms, they already do this really well. So Sakura Grappling, David Hale, he's got an amazing community program there, where they can basically highlight people that will stick to it, and they pay for their first year's worth of training, which is
yeah,
amazing. So, and then it's kind of those community days, and that's where Clinch will be. We'll pop up and serve coffees to parents whilst they wait, bring the
yeah,
community together, because yes, it's all about the children and the youngsters training, but the parents also want to see that they're part of the community as well, because
yeah,
9 times out of 10 they stay and watch what they're up to and how they're doing. And it's just about raising awareness around that, really. It's
yeah,
they're huge classes, big numbers, but I think the doors could be always open slightly wider.
yeah. I agree, and I think it's a fantastic idea, especially with you serving coffee to the parents. I would be there without a shadow of a doubt. And I think, as parents, with children in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, finding our own community equally as much as the children having their kind of time and their friends outside of school. It just gives each of us a new dimension. You know, we might have work colleagues or kind of school parents, or maybe not so much, but kind of jujitsu parents and the vibe around that. You know, I've noticed in previous clubs that I've been at, parents will sit around and sometimes they won't talk to each other. You know, they're there for their kids, or,
Yeah,
you know, they're kind of picking up, dropping off, and there's not that community. But having open days, open sessions where the community can start to grow again, you know, culture and community has changed so much, certainly in the UK and probably elsewhere, where we've become a lot more insular. And
yeah,
jiu-jitsu feels like it's starting to open up some of these, you know, friendships and kind of the support network again,
yeah.
kind of giving us all a bit more hope for,
A bit
you
more
know,
hope. And I think if you can see your children doing it on the mats within a new community, then the parents should also try. You know?
yes, they should.
Yeah.
Every parent of a jiu-jitsu child needs to get on the jiu-jitsu
Yeah.
mats. Absolutely. No question.
Yeah. Give it a whirl.
Okay, now for those parents of the children starting jiu-jitsu, what advice would you give them, Leo? They might be scared, they might not know what they're really letting themselves in for, but how can we encourage these parents that don't already train jiu-jitsu to start?
I think you've just touched on it there. Don't be scared. It's only a belt that they have to tie up, which is probably the scariest part of when you start, is you don't know how to tie your belt up. But I think
Yeah,
it's also having confidence in where you're going. So do your research on the gym, obviously.
yeah,
Um, if you can go and meet the coaches as well beforehand, that's always just to get the vibe.
yeah,
But you know, it's trusting where you're taking them, the environment. It's clean, safe. But for the children themselves, it's yeah, it's just go and have fun. At that kind of age, at 5 and 6, it should just be fun.
yeah,
There shouldn't be
yeah,
any pressure to know anything, and a lot of it is play. But they're subconsciously learning, which they don't even realize. So my 6-year-old will whack an armbar on me, and he doesn't even really know what that is, but he can do it. And
yeah,
it's just the little things that start sticking in their mind, whether it's a
yeah,
technique or a skill, or whether it's how to address
yeah,
an adult, how to talk to someone, how to show not respect, because I think that's a very old school way of thinking of things, but how to
yeah,
be courteous, how to be polite. All these little things start sticking without them
yeah,
even realizing. So
yeah,
yeah, it's good fun. I think it's
yeah.
fun. It's not a combat sport at that age.
Yeah. And I guess as a parent starting at the same time as my kids, you know, it's whilst it's not that formal respect, it's the kind of health and safety, the hygiene, all of those things go hand in hand. And actually, it's feeling supported with other people that might know much more than you, but some of them only know as much as you do, or
Yeah,
even less. So we're all at so you know we're all at different
different
stages.
levels, different stages.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I always liken going into a jiu-jitsu gym as like, you know, being a kid again, because you can just roll around. The bigger the mat space, the more you can have fun and
Yeah,
just play. I
just
love
go for
it.
it. Yeah, love it.
What initiatives are you working on or collaborating over this coming year? And then we'll talk about your kind of longer term plans for Clinch Coffee in the Jiu
Yeah.
Jitsu community.
Yeah, so I suppose future, well, collaborations, as we've touched on, is the Queen Rollers. So attending these community days, that I've been reaching out to some people that are already doing amazing things in the space. So I'm kind of just jumping on the bandwagon a little bit and saying, you know, I can bring my coffee wagon, and then that will bring the community together even more, because they can come and have a coffee or a hot chocolate for the kids. So Rise Community, for one, Rise Community Jiu Jitsu, doing phenomenal things, especially around schools and, you know, school children learning the core of Jiu Jitsu. Be Inspired, another one. If you don't know, check them out. They're really cool. And then I'll be doing International Women's Day for the Empower Grappling Collective. So again, serving coffees, serving coffees there. So, and then it's just talking to so many different gyms about how they could incorporate Clinch into what they do. So a
Yeah.
lot of gyms do have a coffee offer. So it's how can we work towards Clinch being that coffee of choice for that gym, and then all the coffee that is used by that gym will get a donation back straight into their children's program, so they can buy whatever it might be. So a set of new belts for children, or it can pay for all the competition fees for the children competing at that gym. So some, as I said, some names that I used to look up to as gods in the sport, I'm now talking to about how we can potentially work
Good.
together to help their younger kind of cohorts and support the
Yeah.
local communities.
I love it. I love it. Now, if any gym owners are listening, how can they get to know more about the collaboration and how Clinch Coffee can support their gym, and equally the gym support Clinch Coffee?
Yeah, so it's a simple, really, just shout me out give me a DM on Instagram. And this is going straight back to kind of what you said about my coffee and things like that. If people aren't sure about coffee, I speak to so many people, they're not sure about how to make coffee or how to brew it. That's what I'm here to do. It's to talk about the journey. So
Yeah.
yeah, Instagram is a very good way to contact. If not, then email addresses on the website, and there's a page on there about kind of a wholesale partnership and what that looks like.
Good.
As I said, early days, but that's something that I think, you know, as we said, a lot of parents go and watch their children. So why
Yeah.
why spend £7 on a horrible Starbucks when they could have a good coffee that supports the gym that they actually train at as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of this year's goals.
So let's return to your jiu-jitsu journey, Leo, because you're a four-stripe blue belt. You've been training for 5 years now. And do you compete? Is this something in your mix of jiu-jitsu at the moment?
Yes, I have competed. Annoyingly, and this is one thing I will say is if you want to compete, then do it at white belt. I didn't compete at white belt at all, and my first competition, I got my blue belt in, I think it was the September, and I competed in the October. And yeah, it was a big. I came up against a four-stripe blue belt. I think he got awarded his purple belt the next training session at his local gym. So
Wow.
it didn't last very long. So if you're thinking about competing, then get it in at white belt. It's a
Yeah.
lot less pressure, a lot less stress.
Yeah.
But yeah, life is busy. Children, family,
Yeah.
training, work, and I think again, if I can't be 100% in, then I know I'm not ready to compete.
Yeah.
And again, that's scaling back to kind of rugby days where if you're not 100%, then it's not quite, it doesn't sit right with me. But I literally said today, actually, I think maybe July this year, July, August, September, I'll book in for some
Yeah.
competitions.
Good. Now, I know you support Grappling Industries, and there is a Grappling Industries in Birmingham in September, which I'm hoping to be at. Um, Talk to us about your collaboration with Grappling Industries.
Yeah, so again, it was a conversation really. I spoke with Charles Hendry, who's a legend, loves his coffee as well. And the I suppose the brick wall at the moment with tournaments, like the larger tournaments, a lot of them in venues where they have coffee shops. They
Yeah.
have contracted vendors, and they're not allowed to have kind of anyone else. Um, but I managed to do a pop up kind of shop there. So I was selling retail bags and merch and so on and so forth. And for those types of things, it's not about what you sell on that day; it's who you can talk to,
Yeah.
the people you can bump into, the relationships you can forge. It gets a bit easier throughout the day because when people are there, they're there to compete and they're in the zone. If you go up to them and be like, "So, do you want to hear about Clinch Coffee?" It's not the right time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was at the London event a couple of weeks ago. It was phenomenal, like absolutely stacked all day. So
Yeah.
they did a great job at organising that. And I met some people that I've never met in person. I've sent coffee to. So I met the Elements guys. So I met Dominic and Yusuf uh, from Elements down in Brighton. So I met them.
Good.
Tim Campbell from The Apprentice, who's
I did
Inglorious
see that.
Grapplers. Yeah. So and Jude as well. So as I said, it's getting
Yeah.
traction, getting in front of people.
Yeah.
Um, and it's amazing that people know about it. The amount of people that are like, oh, Clinch Coffee, and that's very a bit of a pinch me moment, I suppose. That
Yeah,
it's getting out there, it's getting good word of mouth, and the
yeah,
more tournaments, the more events, the more community days that can happen.
yeah,
Hopefully, the more coffee that will get sold, and then hopefully that's that means more people can be supported at the end of the
yeah,
day.
yeah. I think it's really important and kind of pivotal to the success of the jiu-jitsu community, actually, Leo. So, the origins of the coffee, the networking and the giving back is just so important. And I think, touching on the networking side of things, being at events, meeting people, for me, it's a real pleasure and joy to just chat with as
Yeah,
many
it's
people
amazing.
as possible, because you never know what the connections are going to bring in terms of open mats, invitations, being able to go and support them in all sorts of ways. But I think any small business in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, it's getting out there, meeting more people in person, which I'm always a fan of.
Yeah, that's my thing. I'm a people's person. I can talk and mingle and chat till the cows come home. So, and it's all about supporting small businesses, as we touched
Yeah,
on earlier.
yeah,
Before I even launched Clinch, I was asking people in the industry already, what do you think? Do you think this is a goer? Da, 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 da. So
yeah,
even before it was a thing, the community was supportive, which is fantastic.
yeah. It's so good, and I wish you so much success for the upcoming future and beyond. Because as with our careers in jiu-jitsu, it doesn't happen overnight. We are in this for the long game, and the progress really is to be measured over a number of years or decades, even.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A big
Oh,
sigh. We're blue
yeah,
belts.
yeah.
We're talking about
We've
decades.
got a long way to go.
Thankfully, we're all young enough.
Yeah,
Even if you think you're not young enough, you are young enough, because we're in this sport.
yeah, we're in
Um,
it.
what are your future plans for Clinch Coffee, and your kind of continued jiu-jitsu progress, Leo?
So, well, as you said, continued jiu-jitsu progress is black belt. That's a non-negotiable. I'm in this because I
Yeah,
want, to get to that stage. As and when that happens, I've got no,
decades.
I don't care when, as long as it's earned and I deserve it.
Yeah,
That's fine by
yeah,
me.
yeah,
With Clinch, I think, you know, within the next 3 years is to, I manage. I work full time as well as Clinch, as a lot of us do. It's a bit of a side
yeah,
hustle at the moment, is to move into it full time, to give it full focus and dedication. And then ultimately, it's to invest in my own roastery. At the minute, I slot roast, so I borrow someone else's roasting machine. But to
yeah,
have the full, I suppose, ownership of everything, that's a big goal. But it is
yeah,
obviously a big step. But yeah, that'll be the big goal, to own my own roastery, potentially have some form of community thing on the side as well.
yeah,
So whether that's a coffee shop or whether it's just a space for people to come and learn about coffee, um, a lot of what I want to do is, so it's a route into employment. So
yeah,
giving people tools. I'm fully qualified trainer in coffee as well. So alongside selling coffee, I can go into spaces and train these young individuals in coffee, how to make coffee, because coffee shops are screaming out for baristas. They're screaming out for coffee
yeah,
people, technicians, engineers. So if I can help someone that's struggling find a route into employment by a bit of training,
yeah.
that's, so if it's a little training facility as well, that's kind of my goal for sure.
It's so exciting, and I'm really heartwarmed to hear the kind of future plans for the next generation and beyond. I think it's just so important, and I can absolutely see you with a roastery, a training centre, this, that, and the other, and more mat space. Which
Absolutely.
yeah, who doesn't love coffee and jujitsu?
Coffee and jiu-jitsu.
Leo, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank
Likewise.
you for connecting, and I love your coffee. We didn't mention the quality of the merchandise. I have this T-shirt, but I also bought myself one of the hoodies, and I was so pleased it didn't have all the fluff inside. So
No fluff.
thank you for no
Fluffless.
fluff quality hoodies. Go and get your merch and coffee over on Clinch Coffee. Drop Leo a DM if you're a gym owner to connect and start collaborating to support the very important next generation of jiu-jitsu practitioners. Leo, how can people follow your journey? This is a shout out for your Instagram account, please.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. It's Clinch Coffee on Instagram. And then the
Amazing.
website is clinchcoffee.co.uk.
Amazing. I will be heading over and buying more the Clinch because that is my favourite coffee.
It is.
Wholesale.
Yeah, kilo bags, kilo bags.
I did see that earlier. I was like, yeah, I'm not really sure how long a kilo is going to last me, actually. I know how many scoops and how many grams per thing.
It's
But anyway,
amazing. Some people, how much they order. I'm like, how many coffees do you drink a day? It's amazing.
yeah, we just share it with friends. Just have
Yeah,
friends over for coffee. It's fine.
of course. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much,
No,
Leo,
thank you.
and continue the amazing work that you're doing.
I will. Thank you very much.
If you've got this far, thank you so much. Please go and support Leo at Clinch Coffee. Go and buy some coffee. Go and buy a t-shirt, hoodie, and go and say hello at the next event that Leo features at. I'm always looking for stories, connections, and growth in the sport of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. If you know anyone, please get them to drop me a DM over on Instagram. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for telling your friends about this show. And drop it a rating and review. Catch you again on the next episode of the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast.